All right, fishing the Upper Potomac today. Let's take a look at the river for you guys. You can kind of check out the way it is here on Tuesday. Pretty calm out on the river today. It's been a really good day. We are above Old Dam 2 on the Upper Potomac. Had opportunity, get a little break, to talk a little bit about some crankbaits from today and how these crankbaits are kind of setting up right now. It's still early, but the crankbait bite's starting to pick up. We're seeing the extension of the early morning topwater bite turning afterward into a crankbait bite up until lunchtime. A lot of that has to do with your overnight temperatures now falling below 60 degrees, so it's a lot cooler in the mornings. And then that sun's coming up, but it's not this deathly heat that we had in August anymore. That kind of shuts them down. It's kind of extended that feeding. The river's still down. I've got to take a look at the Point of Rocks gauge at like a little over a foot, and then the Little River down below. Those two gauges kind of bookend the Piedmont section, in my opinion. Though a lot of people carry the Piedmont section all the way up to Brunswick and Knoxville and Harper's Ferry. But between those two gauges, you always get a really good indication as to what the water level and what the current flow is going to be like in the middle section of the Piedmont, which is like Seneca Landing, Old Dam 2, Pennyfield, Swains, River Bend, all the way down, and Swains. So like you've got, it really gives you a really, really good indication. The wind hasn't been too bad, which is kind of surprising, to be honest, because usually it can get pretty windy on this section of the river, but it was a pretty calm, day, relatively speaking, that we've had over the last week. We had some storms roll in during the night, but all that's contributing to an increase in the crankbait bite. So let's talk a little bit about what's happening in the river right now. And it really all is indicative of your river. I've heard reports of there being a significant amount of algae in the Monocacy, the upper section of the Monocacy. But in the lower section, as the mouth from the aqueduct, the Monocacy boat ramp, the aqueduct into the Potomac River, that hasn't really been a concern that I've seen at all when fishing in that area the last few weeks. Obviously, the Monocacy is still at low levels. All of the tribs in the creeks are low. Your deeper water is really going to be found in the Upper Potomac for sure, in a lot of areas, and you just need to find those pockets. But what we're starting to see, which is a good indication of the transition about ready to kick off, is we're seeing a lot more smallmouth in packs of 3 and 4 roaming, okay, from Middle River towards the bank. And what that basically indicates is they're going to start looking for bait fish. They're going to start looking to feed up here in the next probably 2 weeks. It's not going to happen overnight, I don't think, just because of the mild, the mild temperatures and the sustained heat wave that we had. And what I mean by mild, I mean no severe swings back and forth. I don't mean brutal humidity and heat, because that's what we got in August. What I mean by mild in terms of hasn't really been high water, low water, high water, low water, or more hurricane or like significant weather events, or any of those things that you typically can see in August and September. So the river's been consistent in its depth for weeks and weeks. It kind of rose up a little bit over the weekend. You may have seen this in your river system where it rose up a couple inches, but now it's come right back down. And so a lot of that is going to be an opportunity for two things. One, bait fish and crawl. Those are going to be the two things that are going to get keyed on and targeted by your smallmouth, okay? And so you're going to play into that. And eventually it's going to be trial and error, because you're going to start out with some baits, continue with your top water in the mornings, because that's still effective. Poppers, whopper ploppers, things like that in the morning, are still effective, okay? That has not shut down. But what you're also seeing is an extension in the morning for that bite, providing an opportunity for them to chase a little bit. And that drop in water temperature kind of also changes their metabolism a little bit. And so it triggers with them biologically that it's showing signs of colder months ahead, right? And so that begins to happen instinctively for them to feed up. So the two areas of opportunity are, what did we just witness in our system? Okay, in my river systems, you know, I've seen an increase post-spawn of bait fish. Meaning, remember, the bass spawn is spring, smallie spawn, spring, early summer. Sometimes there's two spawns. But you pretty much also need to remember that your other bait fish species, and obviously bluegill and crappie, spawn much later. Okay, so they're still in their infancy, right? This year's class. And there's tons of that bait fish swimming around. Okay, and that's where you want to look for items where you can get on a bluegill or a crappie. Okay, bait fish spawn bite. Okay, and these are lipless crankbaits. I always start out with the lipless in the morning during this time of year. I don't go at it too long if I don't get any bites, and I'll switch to a square bill. But I start out with the most recent spawn fish, okay, in the river system, because they're targets of opportunity. So you want to go with bluegill, again, crappie. These again are lipless crankbaits. Here's another variation of bluegill. It's probably one of my favorite lipless crankbaits. This also is really, really effective in the tidal Potomac. It's got the knocker, more of a one knocker. And you could throw these in a tight window in the morning or in the after lunch in the afternoon, just because the noise is different, the vibration. Again, when they start to trigger and roam and target, that noise, that vibration is something that they probably haven't seen in July, August, right? Most people aren't throwing lipless crankbaits in July and August. So becomes a target of opportunity. And then depending on your river system or your lake, you may also have this kind of variety, okay? More of a pumpkin seed type. So all those are really, really highly effective for the lipless crankbaits to start, mid-morning off with them as the sun comes up. And as I can show you right here, you can see what's happening here, what we got with the sun. On top of the river right now, okay? And so you can work that, getting in with the sun, playing to the advantage of the sun, the direction of the sun, playing in the advantage of still those shade lines, seams, and current flows. Now, another one, so that covers the bait fish, right? Your bluegill, your penguin. You also get their shiners, minnows, silvers, golds, that kind of stuff in any kind of lipless or even your topwater. Is extremely highly effective. And then you also want to roll with I love this rattle in this. It's one of my favorite, narrow, really, this through the water is unbelievable. It's a crawl pattern, really bright orange yellow. They love to key in on this like yellow chartreuse bottom. But this is one of my favorites. When you see crawl, okay, that's when you want to go to this. Okay, if you're wade fishing, Upper Potomac, Monocacy, Susquehanna, and you can see the crawl, and that's what's happening now, is they understand that river, the water temperatures are starting to get cold. They're going to start migrating, looking for areas to burrow in the next, 4 to 5 weeks, to hunker down, right? They don't hibernate, okay? They just dig into the bottom of the river composition. So they're going to be moving, looking for those areas where they can actually do that. And so they'll be out moving, and then the smallies will be out chasing. So once you start visibly seeing them, that's when you want to pick this up, okay? You can also go to your square bill. Okay, nice crawl, square bill, highly effective. This is also another solid bait. It's got a little different knocker and a rattle in it, so it's a little bit different. Love this pattern, okay? Because it really is an Allegheny, kind of cross between an Allegheny and an Upper Potomac crawl in the colorations. It really has the colors that you basically see if you watch on the YouTube channel my videos holding the crawl. and it's showing the difference between the Upper Potomac crawl and the Susquehanna crawl, because the Rusty crawl and the Upper Potomac crawl are very different. Their colorations are different, and their behaviors are a little bit different. So don't sleep on that. Here's a couple other crawl. This is basically a traditional crawl pattern. Okay. Here's a little play on the colors that we fundamentally believe that bass are attracted to. Black and blue, right? We hear that a lot about black and blue jigs and black and blue worms, and that fish love that. Green pumpkin. So you can use that to your advantage. This is a black and blue in a crawl pattern. Okay, now the crawls aren't this color, okay, but it keys on the same action. Okay, square bill, bottom bouncing off the rock, but keying on that black and blue. If you know your fishery, has a propensity of bass hitting black and blue jigs, black and blue worms, right? You can transition to a black and blue crankbait. Because remember, it's more the presentation and the action, okay? But anything that you come across, that coloration could be something they're attracted to. And then also, look at this color. Pretty cool color. You should see this one in the water with the sun glaring off it in the flash. Okay, this one actually really builds up a lot of flash in the water, which I really, really like. So those are some options that you can go for there. Now, other sources that you read about, and they're pretty accurate for the most part, is bleeding bait fish, right? So that red, you ever see, I'm sure you guys have seen the topwater with the reddish head, the silver back, and all that is jerk baits like that. All that is about bleeding bait fish this time of year, because as the water temperatures drop, they're going to die. Okay, some of those bait fish prefer water temperatures above 80 degrees. Well, as the water temperatures begin to fall, they begin to die off. They begin to get kind of on their last leg, right? Or last fin, I should say. And that's when you'll go to a red. Okay, reddish style, different variations of red that they can key on. Either a natural red, or this is a little bit different with purple and red and fire red. Because this kind of is like a crawl color, bait fish color, bleeding bait fish kind of deal. But still, probably the most effective coloration pattern for the Upper Potomac and the Monocacy, for me, has been a simple shaddy type cross hybrid with a shiner. Okay, never fails. All right, yellows and browns. If you get golds and browns, just crazy effective colorations. When they start to feed up, they're looking for that easy prey, and this basically just looks exactly like most of the things that you're going to see in the river system. Okay, and so how you present this on your retrieves, that's a whole nother video. Okay, because you want to gauge that by what you're observing them in the water, how you're observing them attack your baits, and then also the water temperature. Okay, in terms of whether or not you want to speed things up. In August, we slowed things down. In September, it's kind of like in between, and then for me in October, I like to speed things up, because I think they're just more aggressive. Okay, now traditional river systems, maybe tidal, depending on how close your river system is, whether maybe your river system is an impoundment, okay, then you're going to have more of a shad versus a shiner population, okay, and so that's where you want to go with a more traditional square bill. Notice the pattern here. It's almost all of these baits, until I get to these two right here, are all 1.5s. Okay, because that's the size of the bait fish that you're fundamentally going to see. Okay, now I'm going to do another video for the lake. I was at Little Seneca Lake recently, and I'm not using this. Okay, I'm going to something more like this size. Okay, right? Look at the size difference. Okay, because that's what I see in that reservoir, and this is what size I see in my river system. So you want to play that up, and you can still play your natural colors. I'll show you one right here that's been really good for me. And that's a tough body of water, by the way, Little Seneca Lake in Boyd's, Maryland. Um, big bass, big largemouth bass in there. Here's one of the ones. Normally morning dawn is like a plum, anything plum. This has caught fish there when I've decided to go a little shallower in 4 to 6 feet of water. But they like that chartreuse bottom. Okay, they like greens and plums and morning dawns in a lot of the western Maryland reservoirs. But this is an awesome bait. Plus also the upper bay. But you want to get into some of your shad colors. Okay, these are the patterns that you're going to see shine in the water. They're going to mimic what they're used to seeing. And in some of the creeks, you've got some different variations. You've got river chub. You've got a whole bunch of creek chub. You've got a whole bunch of different kind of colors. So you want to have a number of these that kind of, you know, I love this one with the rose kind of red on top. Probably one of my favorites. And then of course for mostly the larger size in this bait, but this coloration I really like in the reservoirs. Okay, in Virginia, this bait's been really good to me on Hunting Run, Lake Anna. It's just, I think they like this. I think this is more of like the coloration patterns for the bait fish in those reservoirs and lakes than necessarily on the river. So I don't throw this one as much on river systems at all, at least in Virginia and Maryland. And then we'll get into like the sexy shad colors. Okay, two different. There's a cracked. These are Lake's Edge crankbaits, Lake's Edge lures. Look at that. They're just perfect imitators of what you're gonna find. Now I usually use pairing these this year all summer long. I call it C20. It's CXX, but I just call it C20. P-line. Abrasion resistant, extra tough, extra strong. And I use 12-pound test. You know, I haven't needed to get anything more than that. You know, it's wrangled in 18s and 19 smallies without any problem at all. And so that's what I like to use. That's really it for the crankbaits. You know, these are just the crankbaits that I'm using. And then situationally, I will go in the river system, especially if I see creek chub, like Monocacy, Antietam Creek, places like that, or above Lander, which is above Pointer Rocks, when you tend to get a little bit more of those larger size, you know, bait fish. I mean, but they're bigger species. I will upsize to a larger size, especially in the fall and early winter, to this bait. And then, of course, I still love the underspin crankbait setup, okay, with a little bit of flash. Change this out as a black. I also have gold, also have silver, and I also have red, okay. You know, red seems to be a lot more effective in the wintertime than any other time of the year. The black and the silver tend to be the best on them, but you also got that thump action. A little bit deeper, you find out mouths. I like to throw this in the mouth of the Monocacy, the mouth of the creeks and tribs. Goose Creek on the upper Potomac, where it becomes a little deeper at the mouth, where the mouth meets the river in some areas. And again, it mimics crappie. Goose Creek tends to hold a lot more largemouth than probably any other creek that I've come across at the mouths along the upper Potomac in the Piedmont section. So it's just a bait that, you know, that obviously those largemouth in there, you know, will key on. And if I need to get down, I need to get a little deeper, I can do the same exact thing with these two divers, because like this one mimics perch. Okay, you come across perch or crappie, and then again, like I said before, your pumpkin seed. Okay, if you want to get down a little deeper and you find that spot where you can get a little bit deeper, just really cool. So that's really, you know, what I've been doing, and what I'm going to continue to do for the weeks to come. You can check out the Smallmouth Armies, Smallies, Chasing Smallies newsletter. I just cover the crankbaits. It's on my Facebook page, Dale Scott Fishing. You can subscribe to that newsletter. It'll come right to your inbox. Talk about all these baits. Talk about crank fishing. Talk about why crankbait fishing is so crazy. You know, during the early fall stages when these bass start moving, and feeding up, and then what you can do and how you can approach the situation, so you know like what's happening in the river and why, so you can repeat that pattern in different areas, and then throw the change ups. Okay, the jerkbait bite is coming. Okay, it's not here right now, but it is coming in the coming weeks. So, but I like to transition from the crankbait to the jerkbait to the jig as we move through October into November. That's just me. That's what I'm the most successful on. Doesn't matter whether I'm wade fishing, kayak fishing, or out on the boat. That's just, my take. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy the content. You can always send me a message on JL Scott Fishing and Eats on Facebook if you want me to cover anything, if you want to go fishing, you want to do whatever. Hey, look, I am down. I'm on the river 2-3 times, sometimes 4 times a week in the fall. It's my favorite time fishing. If you got a spot do you want to introduce me to, I'm down. If you want me to introduce you to a spot, I'm down. All right, mates.